What's going on, everybody? Today on Terp Trends, we're joined by someone who's been shaking up the cannabis space with energy, creativity, and community vision. This is Lulu Tsui. Lulu is the co-founder and chief experience officer of On The Revel and the force behind Revelry, New York's most inclusive cannabis conference series built on education, fostering connection, and celebrating the people truly shaping this industry. With over 15 years in experience in user design, Lulu has worked with giants like Bloomberg, Mastercard, and Hopkins, and she's brought the same design thinking into the cannabis space, building platforms like Chill for e-commerce delivery and Root Sciences extraction software. At On The Revel, she's created a space and model that uplifts diversity, culture, and collaboration, playing a key role in New York's legalization movement and setting the gold standard for what this industry can look like. Beyond cannabis, Lulu is also the user experience and research advisor for Oakland HiFi, working on projects like the Psilocybin Cup and Psychedelic Conference, continuing her mission to normalize and destigmatize both cannabis and psychedelics. So let's get into it. This is Terp Trends. Let's dive in. So if you don't mind, can you take us back to the moment where you kind of knew you wanted to enter the cannabis space, but you weren't there quite yet?
Yeah, so I kind of have a little bit of an interesting background because I was raised when we landed in Oregon. My parents and I immigrated from northern China. We ended up in Eugene, Oregon, where there was a lot of very progressive folks there at that time. This was in the late 1970s. So the people that, ended up taking care of us in terms of teaching my parents English, babysitting, and just helping us like acclimate into American culture were all cannabis growers. So I started going to dead shows when I was like 5 years old, just because the aunties and uncles were just very much involved in this world of plant medicine. So my parents are probably one of the only Asian families that have been totally cool with me being in the cannabis space. So I guess my introduction to plant medicine started really young. And then when I
Yeah.
was interested in cannabis, my aunt went and procured and sat with me. And then when I was interested in psychedelics, my uncle, got the mushrooms for me. And I think their thinking was, hey, you're going to do it, like at least be in a place where you feel safe with good products. So those lessons have pretty much carried me throughout my life. And that's something that has kind of set the way that I approach, cannabis and other plant medicines. So that's how I first was introduced to cannabis and psychedelics. And then in 2015, when the Washington market opened up, some friends invited me to come out and try to do some stuff with them on tech, but that didn't really work out. And then they invited me to stay on site. They're like, hey, why don't you like stick around and see if there's anything that resonates with you? So I ended up staying with them for about 2.5 years, 3 years. They're a tier 3 grower producer in Washington State, so Root Sciences and Suspended Brands. But what really was interesting to me was the machines. So on the manufacturing side and also in the lab side, so I had originally designed the interfaces for Thermo Fisher's mass spec and chromatography machines. So that's kind of what drew me into the lab. And then as, Root Sciences, helped with building out other markets and their labs, I would tag along and then use my background, my professional background is in user experience. So would just be the person asking questions, trying to, learn from different people's points of view, from the lab techs to the chief science officer to, the sales folks and distro. So that's kind of how I got, cut my teeth in cannabis, which is pretty much like, just learning and literally being an intern for 2.5 years at a facility as an operator side.
Yeah, and that's awesome getting that foundation and then being able to having that connection at such a young age and then bring it back kind of full cycle. Did you picture yourself stepping in professionally this way, kind of when you were developing your career and thinking about like what you want to do, um, pre-professionalism, because maybe you didn't really tag along to cannabis right away, but then you still always had that connection. And I think that's what's so important and why I love talking about that is because we all have this individual connection to this plant that just draws us in and we have such a passion for it. And you being the forefront of a lot of things, especially in New York City, that comes with a lot of understanding in other markets and how to navigate it. Do you think your past experiences kind of helped come into cannabis and kind of run with all this stuff?
Oh, 100%. I think just, having cannabis just be part of my life, and also introduced to it in such a more of a healing, community, social gathering tool and healing tool for pain or for, sleep or all of the things that it's just been really beneficial for, has definitely helped in terms of like understanding from the consumer point of view. I think also just my user experience background, it's literally designing products and services and experiences, not for myself, but for the end user, so I think like I keep saying sometimes when people come work with us, we're probably the most annoying group to work with because we talk through all of the touch points for everybody that's attending, from the sponsors to the exhibitors to the attendees to everyone. But I think it's that kind of thoughtfulness and mindfulness around making sure that we understand what people are expecting and how can we make them feel comfortable? How can we make them feel welcome? How can we make them feel delighted? I mean, that in itself is a thing that makes our team really stand out. We consider ourselves events people, but we're at the core hospitality driven. So, making sure that when someone comes to our event, it feels like you're coming to a friend's place. That's what we're trying to do is like really build long-term relationships. Like we don't believe in transactional relationships. That just doesn't really work. And maybe it works in tech, but with cannabis, it's just a very different it's a different little entity and organism. And I think some people come to it because for certain types of reasons. But what we're trying to do with Revelry is literally create spaces that match what we believe the cannabis plant is really great at.
Yeah, and the cannabis industry is like no other, especially when it comes to not only navigating the legality side of everything, but also navigating the melting pot of personalities that we have in this industry when it comes to culture wise and then mixing with professionalism. It's such a unique yin and yang take in my mind. And I always say it because you have the very business oriented people that are involved, but then you have like the plant culture, passionate people, and it really just collides because we need both for it to progress, for the culture to progress. Like one can't do it without the other, but they can be such polar opposites. So it has to be maybe a little more relieving, kind of coming from those more corporate structured lifestyles to now blending that into this type of culture. I'm sure people definitely appreciate your mindset when working with you because you have to add that element to it, um, on top of things, professional and experience behind everything else, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think also, having being an immigrant and having English as my second language, you kind of learn really early on how to shut the fuck up and listen because sometimes you just don't even have the words to express yourself. So I think to your point, um, I think there's good people in every type of room, right? And it's being able to connect with people to find the ones that really you vibe with. Because, what we try to do is we understand like everyone deserves an opportunity. So we're going to just create these spaces where the good people from all backgrounds and industries can come together. And, we're very much a vibes energy group. A lot of people don't know that we do this kind of visualization exercise before every event with all of our team, and we just really try to think about like what are the vibes that we're bringing, like not about us, never about us, but like how do we want people to feel? Like, how do we want people to interact? And I think because New Yorkers are just so on top of each other all the time that like people sense energy, even though they might not want to admit their woo woo, but like you feel it. And I think that's just something I'm just grateful for my team because we all have a very similar ethos of, trying to really provide a platform for everyone to be able to have an opportunity. Because at the end of the day, the only way you're going to have a healthy or sustainable market is to have variation. I mean, not just markets, but populations, species. Like we can get more into that at a different podcast. But also, we got to understand that New York, let's just say all of the stores and things like that, like those are like neighborhood small and medium sized mom and pop stores. We don't really have these like large scale kind of mega stores. It's just not the norm. So, we're also trying to match what is already in New York, right? Like, um, I always just see like there's some brands that have come in from out of state that are like, hey, we want to learn about what's going on. Let's do some discovery. Let's talk to the operators. Let's learn about the demographics from, the consumer demographics because it might not be the same from where we're from. And I've seen those folks really move really well, and they're growing and they're like respected. And then I see other groups that come in and they're doing the same playbook, right? Like they do the same playbook from their state. It probably didn't work well because it's very rare for someone to come into New York right now where they're blowing it up and it's a new opportunity. A lot of people are like, hey, we've been really limited and it's not going well in our market. Here's a new one to come into. I just really much advise that if you're coming in, um, be a little bit humble to learn, because like I just came, I was talking to someone about sports. It's like if you're part of a sports team and you're running the same play and it's not hitting, you have to either change to a new play to try, you got to change coaches, or you got to change a team. So I'm just seeing that like given user experience and design thinking, it's just like give yourself and your team and your brand a little bit more time to just learn more about New York before you just kind of jump right in. Um, so I don't know how I got into that tangent, but
No, that's good, and I think that's also something to kinda highlight in cannabis. We have a surplus of brands, especially brands that are now operating in different states, but they don't exactly learn from their mistakes. And then they wonder why their numbers aren't the way they are. But some brands don't take into consideration of maybe the location they're in, the culture that's around that location, and then how to utilize that and then position themselves properly. They kind of just come in with their own play, like you said, that they ran in another state, not really understanding the landscape they're playing in because it may be completely different or a whole different field. And you have to be ready to pivot, especially on cannabis. You need to be ready to pivot daily, and have multiple backup plans because it changes daily, you know? And for people that maybe haven't ever been to a Revelry event like myself, how do we explain the essence that you're really trying to capture when throwing these types of things in New York?
yeah, so we host kind of all different types of events, but our primary one we've been focusing on for the past 2 years is our Revelry Buyers Club, which is our B2B. So for B2B, I think just what's most important for our brands right now, our exhibitors, is to have access to decision makers. So I'd say 90% of all of our attendees on day one of our upcoming show, which is our Buyers Club, are going to be retail owners, micro business owners, and buyers for them. So, POs and leads all day, like fire hose of leads, fire hose of POs. That's what the intention is. And of course, we also have industry professionals that are coming in as well. But the majority of people that our exhibitors will be connecting with are decision makers. And then, we don't have vendor days in New York right now. For the last that I checked, that might have changed. So when we were thinking about the festival, we're like, okay, well, there's a hole that needs to be plugged, which is like, how do we connect the brands to the consumers in a way? So our thought process was, well, the tables are going to be set up for day one. Let's make day two consumer day. So this is day two, 21 and over. If you want to come, probably have about 200 brands on site. So this is an opportunity for New Yorkers or, other attendees from other states and cities, because New York is still the nucleus and a lot of folks from other states do come in, meet the brands, shake their hands, learn about their products. And if they're interested in the product, then there's an ability on site to make an order and that will be delivered to you on site. So this is our way of addressing growing the addressable consumer market, because in New York, we are the largest consumer, demographic in the world. And it's just a very different way. Like, I have friends, around my age in music and fashion and design and art and tech. They're all consumers of cannabis, but they're not really loud about it, right? They're not coming to
Yeah.
all of like the super heady events because it doesn't really hit with them at our age group. But we're trying to build out the festival to incorporate other things that New Yorkers just like to do. Like, cannabis has always been an accessory, right? It's not like
Yeah.
it's not always being smacked in the face with it, but it's like being used for creativity. It's being used for stress management. It's being used for sleep. So, our focus has always been, let's create things that we vibe with, that we like, but more importantly, let's do things and create things that New Yorkers already do anyway. And let's just enhance what they're already doing with their activities and have them, come to our festival.
And how many years have this been going on now?
Ooh, Jacoby and I started this in 2016. So back then when we met, I had experience from the Washington market. He was part of one of the first verticals in the Colorado market, and we actually met
Oh, cool.
through tech. And at that time in New York, lots of conversations around advocacy, lots of conversations on investment, but there really wasn't a lot of conversations around what it was like to actually be participating in the industry. So we decided to hold our first meetup. I think we had like maybe 15 people from other markets, and we just started, seeding the people that believed the same way we do in terms of ethos, which is there should be opportunities for everybody, and to also be open to sharing knowledge. Because back then there was a lot of gatekeeping of information, right? You had to have a lot
Same.
of
Yeah.
money, you had a lot of resources, and people are like, hey, this is such an investment, like, I don't want to share, right? This is kind of like my advantage. So we just started seeding people that we really kind of fucked with and started, introducing them to New York, because I'll keep saying this, you and I, if we're on the West Coast, I've had decades long relationships with people through Zoom. But in New York, it's a little bit more conservative. It's still a little bit old world. So people want to shake hands with you. People want to look you in the eye. People want to know what you're about. And if they vibe with you, they want to make money with you. So it's
Yeah.
definitely a little bit more high touch. But I think sales cycles are just so much shorter because it's so community based that I'd be like, hey, so who are you going with your with your seed to sale, or sorry, not seed to sale, with your POS? Or hey, did you pick up this brand? And if we're buddies and you say yes, I'm like, cool, I'm going to do the same thing. So there's a lot
Yeah.
more this interaction and more human connection versus this virtual connection. So that's what
And I
we're
feel
trying
like
to do.
it's bringing that community back.
You're kind of forced to, right? It's like, at least in New York City, there's so many people, you can't really not communicate, like from riding the trains or like going to the bodega, or just there's just too many people to not be a forced extrovert, even if you're introvert.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. And I feel like it is something that we lost touch with in cannabis. It's all of, at least on my side, like sales and wholesale, a lot of emails, spreadsheets, Zoom meetings, quick touch and bases. You're not really getting like an intimate, consistent one-on-ones with people and building that repertoire that you would with another industry per se, which always like raises something for me because it's such a community-based plant and community-based medicine and business that we're trying to drive, but yet we're adding this like inhuman element to it, which is weird. And that goes part of that yin and yang,
Yeah.
that business to culture. That cannabis just is so intertwining always. It's interesting. Such an interesting
Yeah. I mean,
landscape.
I have an opinion. It's like what I've seen, and again, my opinion, it's like cannabis and money don't automatically connect. But if you do cannabis and community, that creates magic, and that magic brings money.
Yeah. Just those
You know,
words, I got chills hearing that because it's true. That's the real way I think the plant should be practiced. But I love that we do have the job force that we have for people to get involved with it. We're opening up the doors for legalization with it. All things that need to happen with the business side of the plant. And hopefully it all merges really well in the next decade or so as we produce this new landscape of legalities. And so why, you and your partner have different experiences in other markets. What drew you so close to New York?
I think in other markets, a lot of people talk about diversity, and New York, for me, coming from the West Coast, I've been here for 20 years, but really seeing that there's so many different types of people outside of what they look like, right? Just from like professional backgrounds, religious backgrounds, educational, like, just family backgrounds. This is the diversity that everyone talks about, and there's
Yeah.
plenty of people that look like us here. So, when we first started this, there wasn't a lot of representation of me or Jacoby or anyone on our team in any of the rooms, any of the events, any of the conferences. So we were just like, we know that New York is a large market for consumers. We know that there's such an amazing population of different types of people here. So let's focus our energy and really kind of try and do something a little bit different in the way that we believe. So we're kind of like, people call us the anti-conference or the anti-trade show. Um, and it's an experiment, to be honest. It's an experiment that um, for me has just been so rewarding. I think for my team members as well. It's just like, hey, we have an idea. Cool, should we try it? Okay, it's working. Like, and if it's not working, then there's no fingers being pointed. It's just like, hey, we tried something. So, um, yeah, we're just trying to like ideate and execute and see if people pick it up. And that's why I think it also keeps it really refreshing is anytime you come into our event, it's never the same. I mean, we have foundational elements, but we're going to try different things, and we're going to I think we're just going to play. And I think a lot of times when you go into these events or these conferences or these trade shows, there's kind of like this missing element, which I grew up with cannabis, which is delight and joy and laughter and experience. So, we want to just be really, honoring that part that sometimes gets left out.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it being in New York and with all the new kind of legalities rolling out there, what's it been like with the adult use program coming aboard? Have you seen that? Any comments on that? Have you seen, um,
Too
is it
many
going well?
too many comments on that. But I also want to say, like every market fumbles in the beginning,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think New York gets is just a larger and more it's just a larger and more loud like market. So the amplification of the misses and stuff are just gonna just be louder and amplified in general. So lots of people are gonna have opinions. I think lots of as you use from my UX designer hat on, I think there's a lot of things that could have been learned from other markets and implemented. But at the end of the day, like what I'm most proud of is the fact that we're the first state that actually has our social equity as part of our legislation. So I think the last statistic I saw was like 80, almost 80% of all of operators are actually social equity, so justice impacted. So I think that has been beautiful to see, right? Compared to other states where social equity is kind of an afterthought. And I think maybe a positive is we've set a standard now that as other markets come online, that's an immediate part of the conversation. And then I also don't want to detract the fact that, yes, there's all these lawsuits. Yes, there's all these kind of fucked up things happening. But I want to highlight that we still have operators that are pushing through all of this mess. I call it the, season 3 of the New York Cannabis Hunger Games. Um, but they're pushing through, and they're the grittiness of New Yorkers. So, like, it's kind of like the thing that I learned here when I first started at Bloomberg, which is like, don't ask, don't ask for forgiveness, or what is it? Don't ask for permission, just ask for forgiveness.
Ask for forgiveness. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's part of what New Yorkers are great about. We suffer every day. We suffer. It's complicated. It's hard. So maybe New Yorkers are a little bit more conditioned to all the pains that they have to go through to get to the end goal.
Yeah. They're used to that gritty grind that cannabis adds to that business element, you know. It's especially if you're new to the space, it's a journey and it can be a headache. And I'm sure adding the elements of just like what New York, like I couldn't imagine trying to find retail space in New York and what that looks like, the parameters. I've never even looked into it, just because of all the stuff I've done in like PA and Jersey. You guys are tied into the events, but do you want to break into any other realms? Like, would you want to get into dispensaries or growing or anything like that?
Um, we'll see. We have our hands full with this. I mean, it's just really funny. Like, Jacoby comes from he's a math major. He's graduated as a mathematician. So I'm from the UX side. Um, Peter Mikado on our team, who's our head of community and content, is a neuroscientist. Jason Starr from our team, who's our chief impact officer, is a human rights lawyer. Was instrumental in helping with some of our legislation. We got Saki Fenderson, a longtime advocate, activist, and community builder. Gigi on my team, comes from a background of marketing, trade show, and then and then Delilah, our new ad, just graduated from LIM College from like the cannabis program. So I think
Nice.
like we just have a very different perspective on how
Yeah.
to just different ideas and different ways of solutioning. I think that's the most powerful thing we can bring is to your point, cannabis changes so quickly. Our team is really great at pivoting and solutioning together quickly. Um, so we got our hands full. I mean, the fact that we have never done a trade show and now we're the largest and most impactful one in
Yep.
2 years. I gotta say, like, I have a pretty fucking amazing team to be able to not have any experience in that world and to be able to be killing it in New York is
Yeah.
phenomenal. Um,
Shout out to the crew.
Shout out to the crew. Like, this couldn't happen without them. And it's been pretty magical to see all of us take on things like never in a million years. If I was a kid and you're like, oh, you're going to be doing events, I'd be like, what the fuck? You know,
What?
like,
Yeah.
what the actual
Yeah.
fuck? What?
Yeah.
But we've all adapted, and I think it still gives us excitement because we're all, I think, recovering people pleasers to a certain degree. But
Yeah.
we're all people of service, just from everything that we've chosen to do. And I think that's the through line that connects everyone in our team is hospitality and being of service.
Yeah. And I think those are just core essence of the plant as well. That always that stay true to it and add to that community aspect. So more on the side, you have the buyers club, and it's at two. You have two events for that, right? In New York, two
It's a
different
2 day.
locations for
Yeah.
that.
The same, no,
Yeah,
same location, just two
same
days.
location.
So Friday,
Okay.
September 12th is our buyers club, and that's the B2B. And then the next day, Saturday the 13th, is our festival. So, we have stage programming, we've got some panels, we've got, so what are our panels? We have OG New York stories of our history with cannabis strains here in New York. We're going to have a consumer education piece about like understanding what's legal, how to read COAs, how to read labels, what are the different types of products. So cannabis kind of 101. We're going to have a very interesting thing that's happening is about building an authentic brand. So we're going to have a panel about brand building. We're also going to seed. We're going to have a psychedelics panel. So we're seeding
Nice.
as we're launching our psychedelics conference beginning of 2026. And then we have our conversations. So Scotty Beam is coming in for a conversation. Black Dot will be on site for a conversation. We have Eagle Wit as a comedian that we're trying for the first time. See how that goes, which I'm excited about. And then we'll have performances. So we have Angel and Ren DJ group. I guess Flacco's from the Bronx, another DJ group. Phony People band. We have another person we're going to be announcing soon. And then another partnership that I want to talk about is we're partnering with Smorgasburg. So I don't know if you've heard about them. They're one of the largest food festival groups. So, food and cannabis go hand in hand. So excited
Yeah.
about that partnership. And we're just going to have, it's going to be a fun time. And the community shows up. I think I keep hearing like, oh my God, you guys are the only show that we're actually wanting to come to. Because, once you get, so it's exciting to, have people kind of pick up what we're putting down is like, we want to create a space where good people come together, share some good smoke, eat some good food, listen to some good music, hang out, and, in that mindset, do good business.
Yeah. I think you got it pretty figured out right there. That could just be the banner. Good smoke, good food, hang
Good
out,
people.
do
Yeah.
business,
Yeah.
you know? I'll be in. That's what I'm going to. That's really sick. So besides that, you mentioned quickly psychedelics, right? And what is your role with psychedelics in your relationship? Because this is a huge nuance, and they do intertangle with cannabis more than people think. Especially if you're diving into that type of spirituality and trying to figure some stuff out. How's that all playing out, and what are your goals in that, like navigating that landscape?
Yeah, so same thing with kind of what we saw in cannabis, right? There was like the suits and the lab coats and the activists and we all kind of we fall somewhere in between. Like you're gonna go to a conference where it's like super tech and business and science heavy and then super advocate heavy, which is all both are really important. But I lean both ways, right? But so I never felt always like, hey, this is one that hits for me. So that's why we started Revelry. This is why we're going to do the same thing with psychedelics. In terms of my involvement, I've been a partner with Oakland Hyphae, Reggie Harris's group. And because of my background with user experience as a designer and researcher, I've just been doing a lot more interviews with facilitators, therapists, doctors, as well as people that are interested or currently partaking in whatever method. So again, just a lot of learnings and insights. I'm not a medical researcher or a doctor, but I think what skill set I have that's really been trained in my professional experience is listening and learning and being able to see insights, being able to see how people's mental models are, being able to, craft and things that resonate with them from language to um, communication to, trying to really understand their needs and wants and being able to tailor things around that. So it's the most impactful. Quickly.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think, why do you have this passion? You know, your connection to these people and wanting to help them, the phrase you're a recovering people pleaser, but there's something burning inside of you that has this drive. What do you think that is?
I think it was just I think I was just born with it, you know?
Yeah.
I think also just coming from a family that was really adamant about, actually, let me roll that back. I think coming from a culture where, the West is self, family, outward. Chinese culture is country, family, and then yourself. It kind of is the exact inverse of that. So I think that was just very much. I'm first generation. I was born in China. My parents, speak Chinese at home. So I think that is a huge influence, about making sure that everything else is served before you, which can be
Yeah.
a detriment at times as well. I think also growing up in Eugene, Oregon, which was extremely progressive and community driven. I mean, it's a very interesting state where, originally, I don't know if people know this, it was set up to be an exclusively whites only state. But now it's pretty much evolved into like the hippies, the rednecks, the cult leaders, libertarians, the anarchists all kind of coexist. And I have this hypothesis that they kind of all coexist because they were all playing the game, from the grow to the distribution. So maybe the plant tied everybody together through that means as well. So I think just, part of it probably is it's that's how I was born. But then, secondarily, my culture and my community kind of shaped and nurtured that.
Do you think it helps you being able to show your success to other people in your culture to be more accepted towards cannabis? Because sometimes there's still a stigma, right? From
Yeah,
my understanding.
there's such a stigma, and the stigma is because in the 1800s, the UK wanted to do trade with China, and China was like, we're good, that's cool. And then they did what they always do, which is they flooded the market with some type of addictive substance. So they flooded China with opium. So, and it killed the nation. That's what really broke China down. And pretty much they called him the weak man of the East, or the sick man of the East. So, um, yeah, I mean, I just feel very grateful that my parents were, I mean, what could they say? Like the people that were helping us, like really actively helping us, what are they going to like look down on that? No, like these are the people that, came and did Tai Chi with my family on the weekends. These are the people that were interested in the herbal medicine that my mom, like, I don't think I even took like Advil until I left college, So there's connection happening on the human level. So, and then that the cannabis and how they approached it was very much like an herb. So like I was just back home with my mom, and she's having some issues with her bones. So we went to the dispensary, and I got my mom and my aunt like all the creams and all the balms. And then, my mom's an avid gardener. She's going blind, but like that gives her joy. So she's like, I want to grow some plants. So we got her some clones. So it's just been part of how we are growing up in Oregon. And I think, just by leading by example, right? Like if the people who took care of us were such assholes and did and smoked weed or, grew weed or, I don't think the association would be as beneficial or, changing their hearts and their minds because you got to understand so many Asians are anti-cannabis because they see it as they group it all into one thing. It's not like, oh, cocaine and opium are much more different than mushrooms. Like they just think of it as drugs. So I think the more we like, I've always been loud about it. Like I just, even when I was working for corporate, I'm like, oh, I'm be gone for 2 weeks because there's this cannabis thing that I need to go to. And they'd be like, what? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing it. And just speaking without shame, like if you're not ashamed about it, then how can
Yeah.
people thrive shame? How can it infect you, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
I think, yeah, I think it's important to be loud about it. I think if we're going to move things forward, we ourselves have to move things forward. However way is going to work with your families or with your colleagues. But yeah, I honestly can't say, at least in my family structure, I've had anything negative happen. And now I'll give you a funny example. So my mom calls me and she's like, "Oh, hey, so remember Auntie so and so?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay, well, Auntie so and so has a relative that is growing cannabis. So I told them about you. So could you talk to them because they want to like distribute somehow?" So my first question was, "Okay, Mom, is it do they have a license or do they not have a license?" She's like, "Oh, I don't know, but if they don't, does it matter?" And I was like, "Mom, Jesus Christ, like you're 70 years old and you're trying to
It's just
broker
brokering. He's doing.
brokering." And then she's like, "Okay, well," and I ended up talking to them, and now she's like the expert. She's talking to all her friends about it because they're retired. They're retired and they have nothing else to do. So now she's like the expert in brokering for cannabis, not even known if it's legal or not. With her the other aunties. So it's just
I love
really
it.
funny. Like never in a million years when I was in like a kid to be like, "Oh, Mom's gonna have a really switch about everything cannabis."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I always joke with my dad. Luckily now, their mindset's a lot more open, especially seeing that I was able to be successful professionally in it. But like growing up, like as a kid, and your parents seeing that, um, you doing something and kind of paving a new path that's unknown to them, or they have these taboos and stigmas in your head, like it's not always easy trying to chase what you want to do when other people are kind of deeming it not acceptable, but you're sitting here just being like, dude, it's a plant. Like it's a plant. But I had dreadlocks like down to here. I did the whole thing, and my parents were just like, what the heck? But once you can show kind of your true authentic self and then put that in place professionally, I think it really does open the door for conversation for people that were kind of turned off to it before because they can see you and they can already relate to you. So how's it been kind of navigating that and breaking the stigma? Because not only now are you bringing the community in, you're like kind of pushing a whole new culture, especially in New York City. Like you're kind of paving the blocks there, you know?
Well, I think these people have always been here, right? Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's kind of like, should I say something? Should I not say something? So, I think what we're really good at is just creating these spaces where people can find like-minded people and feel safe to have conversations about the things and not feel judged. I think, we are really living in a really interesting time of like shift, like polarization and shame and blame. And
Yeah.
we forgot that, part of being human is having difficult conversations, being able to coexist with different opinions, right?
Yes. It's the
And
biggest one right now.
having maybe some like critical thinking and discourse. And it might not be comfortable, right? But like, so I think to your question about, I don't think we're paving anything new. I think we're creating spaces that people who are already existing can come and find community.
That's awesome. And it's important. So what's happening up in the horizon? You have the Buyers Club that's coming up in September, right?
Mhm.
Middle September.
Yeah.
After that, what's after that? Anything?
Yeah, so Buyers Club, September 12th, Revelry Festival, September 13th, Pier 36, NYC in Manhattan. And then we're launching our psychedelic conference. We had a name, but we got kind of we got stopped during our submission for trademark. So we have to come up with a different name, and we don't want to rush it. So we have
Yeah.
a hold July 31st right now in Brooklyn for our psychedelic conference. So it's going to be speaker series. different people from different backgrounds with different modalities, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to create this is what I have been seeing. And so I started working with Reggie in 2019. And it's morphed into kind of like, oh, I'm an expert and I run the rules of this, and these are the rules. And I'm going to be the first to say is there's no fucking rules. Everybody might have some guidelines. I'm a big believer that these are tools that will help you. So let me roll that back. I'm a big believer that you are your best teacher and you are your best doctor. And I think psychedelics and all plant medicines are a really great way to tap into that for yourself.
This episode is brought to you by Waddle, the world's fastest and easiest way to review and track your medicinal cannabis products. Waddle offers batch-specific reviews, so you'll know what to stash or what to trash. It's exclusively available for Pennsylvania medical cannabis patients. Waddle helps you take the guesswork out of your cannabis journey and ensures transparency with the verified product tracking. Download Waddle now on iOS or Android, that's WODL, and take control of your cannabis experience today.
Yep. So, one of the reasons why we wanted to start this conference is because it's still really quiet. It's still very kind of, it's pretty much underground in a lot of areas. We wanted to create a space where people can access all of the different types of modalities of healing, all of the different types of folks that are in the space. And, hopefully everybody's coming with an open mind, and we'll be able to connect and learn from different types of opinions. Because again, I will reiterate, there are no rules in psychedelics. And also, I'm tired of hearing friends go like, "Oh, I found a shaman on Instagram." I'm like, "What?" like, please stop. Like, do not find your shaman on Instagram. It's just, because here's the other interesting thing. It's just like, and I'm gonna go a little bit woo woo. Okay, so
That's okay. Do
when
it.
you're going into psychedelics, let's say you enter into another energy dimension. A lot of people can open the doors of those energy dimensions for you. Not many people can close those doors. And what I mean is, I've interviewed a handful of people that have done like 5-MeO DMT 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And they drop into going back into that trip. They're driving 75 miles an hour on the freeway with their kids. They're in the middle of something like, it's so, that's what I mean by like, if there's woo woo, there's science. I think all of it is connected through energy, vibration. Like, I'm not an expert in no way. This is just, again, qualifying with my opinion. I just think it's just important that people know that there's all these other different ways of thinking about it. And we trust that our audience, when we present that information, will be able to be discerning of what's right for them. So that's why we're doing this.
And I would say, especially with this new psychedelic movement that's being reborn, because there was one in the past before, right? Now we're reintroducing it. We
Let me go,
need.
Adam, I'm going to go one back really quickly with that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to be clear that when you're talking about the rediscovery of the second wave, this is from the Western perception, right? So another reason that we want to bring this is like all of these plant medicines have been around for since humans have been here, and they've always been part of more of the indigenous peoples rites of passage, healing, um, all of the things that when colonization happened were completely killed, right? Were completely abolished because it was so ingrained in culture. So I just want to be really sensitive to the fact that this hasn't been a discovery again. It's always been here. It's just like there's a new wave of interest. right? So new wave
Yeah.
of interest, which I think is a beautiful thing. And I think it's really apropos that it's happening in parallel with the world falling apart. So, like it's getting some amplification. Maybe it's just like the natural tool that happens or medicine that happens when the world's energy is all fucked up. So,
Yeah.
I think it's if we can provide access of information, harm reduction, a way to safely maneuver, I think that's we're going to be doing a good job.
Yeah. And I think you're demonstrating that perfectly. But I do appreciate the progressiveness of wanting to understand and the willingness of more of society to dive into these psychedelics and approach it the way that we are. Because like 5 years ago, we didn't really think maybe this would be a thing, right? So now that we have it, I think it's really, like you said, pivotal for our society, seeing of the way that it is at the moment. But I think it is a nice tool that we can use to put us back in alignment with where we need to go. We just kind of lost track a little bit, but I think we'll get back on there. I think as a whole, we're approaching that bottleneck with more people like yourself and educating and more other psychedelic and cannabis panels and events. I think there's some new hope
I mean,
being spread into
imagine
the culture.
imagine if we replace fluoride with MDMA, like low bits of MDMA in the water supply, like just for like maybe a generation or two. Like let's see what happens with that, you know?
Yeah. Or
Um,
just take the fluoride out. Let's start with that, you
or
know?
that, or that.
But
But
no,
yeah, I think
I agree in that sense. For sure. What do you for people trying to get involved, and maybe they're just kind of starting this journey, what are some places they can look to for information? I mean, they have your platform as well. Are there any other platforms you recommend, or friends of yours that you recommend people look into?
so our website is revelryny.com. So revelryny.com. And then our Instagram is On The Revel, and that's with a V again, ONTHEREVEL. I think it's just important for people, if you're interested in coming into the space, just show up, check things out, meet new people, be present, see what makes you feel like. I'm a big believer that your body's going to tell you if it works or not. You see how you feel after you connect with different types of people or different products. I think also be humble. Take this as opportunity to just listen and learn, and maybe approach it from like a research project. Um, there's a lot of great services. If you're in, like, one of the things that I think New York has been really progressive at is incorporating cannabis programs in our higher education, right? So there's cannabis programs at Medgar Evers, LIM College, Cornell, NYU. So it's been really nice to see the state think of it as, or small investment, but invest in it as something that could be for our future generations.
Yeah, for sure. And some closing words, anything that we want to touch base on coming up on your side that we want to put out here, that we didn't touch yet today. I think we got a pretty good understanding of what you're bringing to the culture here in New York.
Yeah, I think we're just excited to come and celebrate with our people. Just
Yeah.
at the end of the day, um, New Yorkers are in small places, therefore we're outside all the time. So we got to also do the hard work, but we also celebrate, and that's what we're creating spaces for.
You got it. Well, rock with the revelry. You heard we're going to be celebrating, and we got the buyers show coming up, so stay tuned for that. I'll drop all those details. Lulu, I appreciate you.
Thanks, Adam. Been a pleasure.
And